It's the coaches, the best coaches out there are going to listen to you and meet with you where you're at in your journey on whatever topic that you're talking about and build together from there. They're not going to sit up here and try and bring you to them, if that makes sense. They're going to come down here with you and then we're going to go together up. And I think that's like the number one thing. I don't care what kind of coach you are. I think that is the number one thing that you can do to be effective in helping anybody with whatever you're coaching them on.
Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. This episode is sponsored by Arrowhead Leadership Consulting. What are your organization's biggest pain points right now? Low EQ leaders, weak managers, toxic culture, high turnover, low engagement, leader development, lagging behind company growth, no company career path. Let us know if your organization needs leadership coaching, workshops, training, or keynotes. Visit arrowhead-leadership.com for more details. Arrowhead-leadership.com.
EQ Gangsters, I am super stoked to interview our guest today, Laurel McKenzie. She is amazing, y'all. So, and I'll let her go into her ninja background and stuff. She is a behavioral scientist, and I'll say this: she has coached and provided insights and kind of like leader development coaching stuff for like the highest speed people like on the planet, and I'm not exaggerating. So, and that's I can't go into I can't go into any more of the details, but her background and her target audience that she has been exposed to has literally been the top 0.001% of the planet. And so anyway, so she has a fascinating background and perspective, and she also is working on some really fun projects. And again, I'll let her kind of go into whatever she's able to based on whatever she's able to go into. So Laurel, thank you so much for your willingness to be here and to share your wisdom and your insights with us. Can you give us a little bit about your background and how you got here?
Yeah, sure. And way to like pump my tires, because like that was good. I need you to come to any event I speak at and like intro me in.
I'm your hype man. I'll be your hype man.
Yes, please be my hype man. Or like in the front row of the crowd, just be like, that's her. um but yeah, my background, man, it's been a journey. So I think like the core things that I kind of identify by is I'm an athlete. And I call myself, and I have to say, I stole this term from one of my academic colleagues, Susie Green out of Australia, but I consider myself a pracademic. And what that means is that I'm a practitioner and an academic, and I'm trying to blend the two together so that I can take what academia is saying and make it practical for use. And so from the athletic background, I mean, soccer player growing up all the way through college, tried out for a pro team, played semi-pro. I'm an all-American athlete, so I've done the thing in terms of athletics, and I understand what it means, what you need to do and the dedication necessary to compete at high levels in sports. But then from the, I guess, work professional background, I'm fully invested in psychology. And there was a day where I thought I was going to help soldiers coming back from deployment deal with kind of like the consequences of deployment, whether it be lost limbs, PTSD, whatever kind of trauma they've experienced. But that's what I was guiding me in my master's degree. So I have a master's in clinical psych, and I was like, okay, I'm going to help soldiers with brain injuries and psychological issues as a result of their work. But after that, I actually got exposed to this whole idea of positive psychology, which is using psychology to thrive instead of helping broken people or people with, issues get better. And I immediately identified with that. So how can we help people perform better and thrive using psychological principles that were typically reserved for dealing with sickness or illness or mental health issues? And going that route, I started to dig into like resilience and optimism and emotion regulation, memory, attention, decision-making ability. And I started working with the military, and that's what you were mentioning. Is I came out of grad school and I went and started working with the military in Fort Benning down in Georgia. I think it's called something. I don't know what they're calling them now, but whatever that one's called now, down in Columbus. Working with basic trainees, helping them who, when they're trying to work on a range and shoot weapons for the first time, how can I help them keep their nerves down? How can I help them refocus when they miss a shot? How can I help them perform well? And I also worked with Jump Master and Pathfinder schools, helping both of them optimize what they're capable of in those schools. Just for your audience, Jump Master School is people who, it's like jumping out of an airplane with parachute, but the Jump Master is the one that's like guiding the whole thing when a whole group goes through. And then Pathfinder is not the same thing as land navigation. I thought Pathfinder was like finding a path on the ground, like a trail through the woods. That's not it. A Pathfinder is finding a path for an object from a plane to the ground. And it's all kinds of like math and things that I am not good at. And so I was trying to help them think about how to get through that school effectively. And then I moved into even more specific performance psychology with a unit up in DC. And that's where I really like took off with this whole field. We started working on long-term memory. How can you retain information across time? How can you make decisions as quickly as possible while fatigued? And so we were blending like the Army combat fitness test with cognitive skills training. So when you're fatigued, how can you make decisions, remember information, and be accurate in both areas? And used to go up with the guys in planes, measure their heart rate, see how their body's responding to jumping out of planes in a military free fall. Did a lot of really, really cool things with them and grew as an individual and hopefully helped them, even in the basics, with like sleep. Because they always wanted to be like mental ninjas, to your point. They wanted to be like, Laurel, how do I remember a list of blah, blah, blah for information? I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. How's your sleep? They're like, I don't care about sleep. Tell me about how to remember stuff. I'm like, no, 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 no. You can't remember stuff if you don't sleep. And so I always started with the basics, including not only sleep, but physical activity and diet. And there's social connections. Like there's all these things that are foundationally important for your brain to function correctly before we can get to like the ninja skills. So that was like a package deal to the unit that I was working with. Let's get all of these habits right so that you can perform optimally at a cognitive level. And that sent me through my time with the military. And then I moved into my current job, which is as a principal behavioral scientist. I got promoted recently. And here I basically moved out into the corporate space. And I'm taking all these same kind of skills and behaviors and trying to figure out how to help employees in corporate spaces use them to improve their performance at work. Now I don't coach anymore. I'm more of behind the scenes developing the programs. And in this new project, I'm helping the company develop new products to further advance that mission of really the mission of democratizing coaching. So how can we get coaching to everybody in a really effective way? So I'm taking all my behavioral science and psychology knowledge and I'm figuring out how to put it into a product so that it benefits people. And while doing all that, working on my PhD in IO psychology. And so I'm lots of different ways that I'm growing and learning as I'm trying to help others grow and learn and become better versions of themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the long-winded version.
Love it. And each of the, could do 10 or 20 questions on each of those little phases that you've been in. But I want to start here. Like, who cares about coaching? Like, so what? Based on your experience and your body of work of literally working with privates, so in the civilian world, right, your entry-level employee to literally your elite of the elite corporate executives in the military, right, to use the civilian analogy, your NFL athlete level, literally, so from the entry level to an NFL athlete, like what effect or impact have you seen coaching have on those different groups' outcomes or performance?
So the first step for any coaching, then you kind of asked a question there about like who cares about coaching. It's those that care, anybody that cares about performing well in their job and their sport cares about coaching, because that's what the coach is designed to do, is to help you thrive and be optimal in that thing, whether it's your job, whether it's your sport, whatever in between. So like, with military, they were usually called tactical athletes. And so, but then there's corporate athletes. And so if you care to be good at something, you probably need a coach to help you in some way, shape, or form. And that means I would argue that majority of people care about something, and they would benefit from some form of coach. Now, there's obviously like tons of different coaches out there. I know you're a specialist in emotional intelligence. Mine's performance psychology. There's different coaches for different needs. There's sport coaches for those needs. But if you care about your performance in your thing, you probably need to find a coach that will help you be better in your thing. And for me personally, at least in the types of coaching that I've done, what I typically see, and when I worked with the guys on memory, decision making, like there were stories coming back from deployment where like they were remembering critical information that they needed to pass on to be successful in a mission, because they had learned skills from me and my coworkers in the unit to help them retain the necessary information to be successful in their tasks while fatigued. Other stories are a little less, I don't know, badass. Is helping one of the soldiers work on sleep helped improve their relationship at home, or helping them figure out how to have that work home transition for these really tough jobs. How can you turn off and go home and be present with your kids, your wife, or your husband, whatever the case may be? Like that transition. So it wasn't just performing better at work. When we tackled like sleep and diet and exercise, it benefited them in their home lives, and they saw improvements in their relationships with their kids and their spouses because of that improvement on themselves, if that makes sense. And they would take the lessons home and even teach their spouse about sleep, and so they would both sleep better, and it would just benefit both of them at the end of the day.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a recent revelation for me. I would say even over the past, let's say 12 months, I was one of those guys that, I'm hard as woodpecker lips and I don't need sleep. Right. And then until
Mhm.
I went to, had a therapist or a counselor from the VA, and she said, okay, tell me what kind of issues you're experiencing. And I'd rattle off like 15 of my depression and lack of focus and all my issues, 15 laundry list of stuff. And she's like, same deal. Hey, how you
Yeah.
sleep? Well, what did you not listen to anything I just got done saying? Like, I've got all these issues. She said, and how are you sleeping? I'm like, I'm not good, but what does that have to do with anything? And she's like, everything. she,
Everything.
she said all 15 of those areas are because you're not sleeping. I'm like, what? And it
Hmm.
blew my mind. So
Yeah.
I want, because I want folks to hear this, that this by itself would set people up in such a powerful way that folks I know are missing it. Many folks are.
Mhm.
So you're telling me, with your tier one tactical athletes that you have worked with, that the things that would help sustain and maintain that level of elite performance one of those areas that you would work on is their sleep and their daily habits and their nutrition.
Yes. If you try and skip that level and you go straight to memory skills, think about it. I want you to imagine a time where you've been super tired. Imagine what you feel like. If you're me, I'll describe myself. Grumpy. I don't have a lot of patience. Don't talk to me. I don't have like a lot of emotional range. Like, and I can't really like function or remember information. So I'm already at a deficit. I'm like foggy brained and I'm annoyed and grumpy about my whole life, right? You're telling me that I can live in this state and you're going to teach me a memory skill, and that's what's going to work? You can't work in those conditions. That's like taking someone that's wounded and saying go do this workout. Like you're not setting yourself up for success to use the skill that I've taught you. You're skipping a step. You're like trying to go into a run with a limp and expecting to do great. And so until you get those core foundations right, it doesn't matter what skills I teach you, you're not prepared to grasp the skill or use it effectively. Now, there are some people that will. So they'll go from like down here, sleep deprived, not in good shape. They will see a bump to here and they're like, oh, I got it. No, I'm good, Laurel. And I'm like, oh, but what you're missing is that you're capable of this. You went from 0 to 3, and yes, that's progress, but you don't know that you're capable of being a 10 in this area because you're not giving yourself everything you need to become a 10 in that area. Does that make
Love it.
sense?
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. And another thing that I dragged my feet on changing was my diet, because that's another one of the addictions, right? Is food addiction and
Mm-hmm.
sugar addiction. And not realizing until this year, as I'm still working on my self-awareness and stuff, and also, yeah, just the connection between my emotions and my physical body, and then also what I eat in my physical body, was how, like, so when I would shovel a truckload of sugar, and again, I didn't realize it
Mm-hmm.
until this year. So I'm
Yeah.
in the third or fourth quarter of my life figuring this stuff out now. And I would literally drop into, for probably at least 2 to 3 hours, like a depression, like a no
Yeah.
joke depression,
Yeah.
after shoveling a truckload of sugar in my system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, had no idea that, dude, it's because it's what you're eating. It's not because you suck or you're a loser or you're having a bad day. You put
Yeah.
bad stuff in your tank, in the engine of your car, and your car doesn't run on sand, right? It runs on
No.
gas, not
No.
sand. And so when you put sand in your Ferrari, guess what's going to happen to your Ferrari? It's going to get sit in the driveway and be
Yep.
stuck, right? So
It's not moving. Yep.
right, right.
What you put in is what you get out. Put crap in, you get crap out.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
think people think about that very much. And the thing is, and you're kind of at a deficit. So it's an endless cycle. When you are tired, actually, you crave sweets. And I wouldn't be surprised that when you were tired, when you were fatigued, that you were craving sweets.
100%.
And was that
100%.
happening? Were you craving sweets when you were
100%.
tired? That's
100%.
because right. Well, your body is literally craving an energy kick. It's looking for energy because you're like a cell phone battery and you're trying to operate at 5% of your battery, and your body's like, I need something for energy because he's making me stay awake. So what can we use? And you will crave sweet or salty food when you're tired because your body's looking for a source of energy. And so then you feed it that source of energy, and what you get is you get an insulin spike because you just gave it a crap, and blood sugar spike because you gave it a crap ton of sugar. And you're going to ride a high for some amount of time. People are different. And then you're going to crash. And you're going to get super tired. And you're going to do exactly what you described. You're going to have a dump of your neurotransmitters, which make you happy, your norepinephrine, your serotonin, all of that stuff, all those happy chemicals, you've burnt them all out. And now they're gone because you gave your body sugar instead of like a clean energy source, such as like a complex carbohydrate, which will last you a long time. So you gave into a craving because your body is just looking for energy. It doesn't understand anything else except it needs energy. And it's up to you to decide, okay, I need energy. What's a good source of energy for it?
So, and we'll move on from this, but I really want folks to get this.
Yeah.
So you're I'll call you an elite athlete, right? You've got a tremendous background, athletics background. So what is your go-to, like, snack, or you start to feel tired? What are you doing?
There's a couple options you have. One, if it's not too late in the day, you can have caffeine, a small amount of caffeine. But caffeine takes about 30 minutes to digest. So drink it about 30 minutes earlier than when you anticipate you might be tired. Two, a healthy source of sugar would be a fruit or a complex carb, granola bar, rice, something like that. The third way to combat getting tired is actually movement. It's not even diet related. So I actually have a walking treadmill that I put under my desk, and I know that I'm going to hit. It's called the postprandial dip in your circadian rhythm, which is a whole other topic that we could spend like hours on. But you're naturally going to feel tired in the afternoons. It's part of your circadian rhythm. And to combat that, you can do caffeine, a complex carb or healthy sugar choice, or move. And so I get on my walking treadmill under my desk and I just walk while I work. Or if you don't have one, for any of your listeners, go outside and go for even a 10-minute walk in the sun, you're going to feel better. So I have a couple different strategies depending on the day.
That's fire. So something so here's, let me throw out a couple that have worked for me is
Yeah.
I'm the kind of guy I can do a 5-minute little ranger nap, little power nap or
Love
something.
that. Yep, that'll work.
Also,
Mhm.
and I'll literally,
Mhm.
and it could be literally 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and that's somehow it gives me a bump of 45
It's
minutes
like
of
a
energy,
reset.
or
Yeah.
yeah, a little bump.
Yep.
Another
Mhm.
thing is, this is going to maybe sound funny, but I'll throw on some good tunes and have a little Big Poppy dance session and break it down like a shotgun.
That's movement. Yeah.
Boom.
I
That's
love that.
exactly. Drop it like it's hot, huh? Like old
You drop
school.
it like it's hot. Oh, okay, you can get down.
That's
I might need
back
to
in the
see this one
days.
day. I demand that I see this.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I don't know if you have the clearance for that. That's next level.
That's above TS. You got to go beyond that.
That's right. That's right. So okay, that is awesome. And so I'm so glad I'm having this conversation with you now, because I have got, and this is probably this is the first time, I would say it's the first time in my life where I have the level of consistency and personal momentum in my daily habits,
Love that.
and
Mhm.
combined with the probably closest to the cleanest eating I've done in years
Okay.
and years and years. And
Yeah.
shocking, I feel amazing. I feel
Magical.
I feel
Magical.
I know, right? Like wake
Yeah.
up, I read my Bible, I go on a walk, I do a cold plunge, I lift probably 4 days a week, let's say, my lifting, and oh, stretch, because now I'm old school, so I got to stretch out the body and stuff, and and that dynamic right there is just game changer for my mental and emotional and physical and spiritual health.
Yes.
That dynamic right there. If I can just get
Crushing it.
that little bit in. Now, the thing that I was consistent for a hot minute, my journaling, I've gotten out of the habit of that. So I'm trying to get that back incorporated into my
Mhm.
mix, is just getting more consistent with journaling. Um, okay, let me ask you this. Now I want to jump in a little bit more coaching skinny. What do
Mhm.
you think makes what do you think what makes a good coach?
That's a good question. I'd say the very first thing that comes to mind is meeting your client or your coachee where they're at. Like as soon as a coachee, that's what I call them. I think there's plenty of words for it. But as soon as the person you're working with comes to you with an issue, your goal as a coach is not to drive the conversation where you want it to go, what you think they should work on based on what they tell you. It's meeting them where they're at and letting them come to draw their own conclusions with your guidance. You know what I mean? And so it's the best coaches out there are going to listen to you and meet with you where you're at in your journey on whatever topic that you're talking about and build together from there. They're not going to sit up here and try and bring you to them, if that makes sense. They're going to come down here with you and then we're going to go together up. And I think that's like the number one thing. I don't care what kind of coach you are. I think that is the number one thing that you can do to be effective in helping anybody with whatever you're coaching them on.
Love it. Love it. Are you from I'm sure you are familiar with the term KPIs, key performance
Yeah.
indicators.
Mhm.
What
Yep.
what would you say would be the KPIs of a an effective coaching session?
Hmm. First, I'm getting all nerdy over here. My first thought would go to the Kirkpatrick model for understanding how a learning initiative impacts the user and then an organization if you're at the organization level. But there's three parts that are important for an individual, for a coach to think about. One, do they like you and like what they're learning or working with you on? Because if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to learn anything from it, especially as an adult. After that, so I want to know if you're satisfied with what's happening. Do you like it? The second thing is we need to learn something. Do we learn a new skill today? Do we learn a new habit? What do we learn today? So do we like what we worked on? Did we learn anything? The third piece is behavior change. And while that doesn't usually happen in a coaching session, commitment to behavior change, or at least a step towards behavior change, would be the next thing. And then across time in a coaching program or relationship, I'm expecting to see behavior change across time. And so that's what I would be, and they kind of build on each other. Because if you don't like it, you're not going to learn anything. If you don't learn anything, you can't change. So you need all three really for effective coaching. And then if it's organizational level, okay, the behavior changed. What impact did that have on performance at work or in your sport, whatever the case may be? That's the next thing we want to know. So it varies, but at least for the individual level, the first three I think are key, and the content of that varies based on the type of coach that you are.
Right. That's awesome. Okay. So, okay. So how important, if at all, is an emotional connection between the coach and the leader?
Ooh. If it's a leader, because you said leader specifically, which means we're doing a specific type of coaching. But if we're doing any type of coaching,
yeah, a client, leader, team member, person.
I'm trying to think. I don't know if it's worth pointing out. I don't even know if I needed to point that out because I think it might not matter. I think to some extent you have to have some type of bond to the person. And there's another concept in research called the coaching alliance. The coach-coachee alliance is another way to say it. Have you heard of that before? The coaching alliance? There's three parts of it. It's the bond, the goal, and the task of the coaching relationship. And the bond is important because if I don't feel some kind of like bond to you because I trust you, I think you're transparent, I think you're honest, you're empathic, whatever the case may be. There's a few different in research, there's like a list of qualities required for that bond. But if I don't perceive that I feel those things towards you or with you, then I'm also not going to learn from you. And so it's like those are like ingredients to be effective as a coach is you need to build the bond, and that bond is based on a group of attributes or values that you cultivate with your client. Yeah. Because like think about it, if I don't trust that you're going to be honest with me or empathic, or I don't think that you're going to be reliable, that's going to really impact our coaching relationship. And I'm probably just going to be like, maybe resentful, frustrated, and not learn from you. And so it's imperative.
Yeah, that's excellent. Being in a position where one of the things I do right is coach coaches, and also I'm still a coach on my own continued learning journey as well. So
Yeah.
So I, and being in a lot of other coaching cohorts, not all coaches are created equal, right?
Yeah.
And so some coaches, it feels to me and sounds to me, in some cases, are very transactional. And I know for me personally, if I got a coach that was very transactional, I am going to respond exactly how you described.
Yeah.
Hey, this is not, I don't know that this is going to be a
saying
good,
it. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because if I'm just a widget for you, I'm client number 321. Like, dude, just go coach somebody else, dude. You're not my dude. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that and that's where like EQ comes in for me with coaches is like, look, it's not some warm fuzzy. I mean, it may feel warm fuzzy, but realize warm fuzzy has a direct impact on our effectiveness as coaches. You may not like the, forget this emotional connection. It's like, well, dude, then why are you like, you shouldn't be a coach, bro. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. And I think that there's I mean, there's something to be said about different personality types being attracted to different types of coaches. You know, some people might like that transactional approach where it's like, hey, I got to have this difficult conversation with my boss. Just like, can we work through that? And they don't, maybe they're not very emotional themselves, not because they have low EQ, but they're just not an emotional person and they don't want to have an overly emotional relationship. And so that works for them. And so those transactional coaches are going to attract specific types of clients. Whereas others who want higher EQ or a more emotional relationship, they're going to be more attracted to your style of coaching. I'm somewhere in the middle as well. So like with my coachees, like the unit I worked at, it was all men. There was like a few women, like a handful, and it was really just me. And so like credibility and relationship, because I'm a woman trying to coach a bunch of dudes and I'm not a soldier, and so I don't necessarily get where they're coming from all the time because I'm not in their shoes. That emotional kind of like that bond becomes important for them to trust that I have something to offer them. And so credibility and then building that relationship is how I got to a position where I could have impact on them and bring value. Because otherwise, I'm like, who's this young, woman coming in our unit and trying to help us? And otherwise, I wouldn't have work with them because I don't have a bond. They don't trust me. They don't understand what I can bring to the table because that bond's not there.
Yes, yes. And to your point, it is a balance. And as the coach, you really have to have the awareness of the client's personality and bent. Like there's one I had last
Yeah.
week actually. He's a former special forces guy. He had just retired and he had almost zero connection to emotion. Like he knew the word and what it meant, but like
Right.
he hadn't allowed himself to feel emotion for, I mean, maybe 20 years, 24 years that he was aware of. So
Yeah.
obviously I did not say, well, tell me your deepest emotions and feel, right? Because like
Put
he'd be
up,
like,
tell me everything.
yeah, right. He'd be like,
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
dude, pound sand, right? So you you
Mhm.
you have to have that awareness as a coach to know what is that, not only what is that line, but how do you do it once you, because there's a difference between, right, awareness and application
Yeah.
is, you got to know what that line, and for your point, it's like
Yeah.
especially with the group you're working with, again, a very different dynamic or group culture of people that you had to create a degree of an emotional connection, and do it in such a way that led to, uh, like you said, trust and also effectiveness in
Yeah.
the information exchange between you and
Right.
your client at the
Right.
time. So, man,
Yeah.
that's okay. So here's a question. What based on you working with very high level leaders, both in the civilian side and the military side, what trends have you seen high achievers and high performers need to overcome?
Like common challenges and barriers they have. I don't know if there's any. I'd say the key one for any high achievers is work-life balance. And I mean, when you want to be a high performer in your sport, in your profession, usually that means that something else is going to have to give or be sacrificed, and that typically becomes home life or a personal life at all. And they just work, work, work to be excellent. And they are excellent, but they sacrifice in other parts of their lives. And so, and I'm not saying that's across the board. There's some really successful people that have great work-life balance. But if we're talking about common challenges, it's going to be personal life suffering in pursuit of professional goals, whatever it is, you know. And if it's not that, then I would say the other difficulty some high performers have are can be collaborating with others who they perceive are not high performers. It's like if you think you're here and you're performing at this level, and you perceive that someone is performing here, it can be difficult to collaborate with that person because you want them to be here, you want them to be as fast, their decision making to be as quick, you want them to be blah 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 blah. And so trying to identify with this level of performance is difficult, even though maybe this person's happy here, but they perceive themselves up here. And so they can't figure out how to like work with that person effectively. And so I don't know where that would fall into, if there's like a name for that. And I'd be interested to hear what you think, or if you've seen similars or different types of patterns. But I would say those would be like the two first ones that come to mind, at least.
No, that's great. That's great. That's great. Well, and another maybe a dovetail off of your first one is what I have seen in a lot of high achievers that I work with and high performers is and that becomes their new coping mechanism. So, hey,
Yeah.
I'm having issues with mama at home or the kids. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to work not 70 hours. I'm going to
Dive
work
in.
80
Yep.
hours a week or 90 hours a week.
Yep.
Oh, honey, hey,
Yep.
sorry, I can't make it. Hey, little Johnny, sorry, dude, I can't. Right. And so, because that's what they know and that's their comfort zone and they're good at it and all those different things. So that's another, and then trying to get them to, because typically and I'll say just from my end, the EQ space is not the strength of a lot of dudes and or high
Yes.
achievers, high performers. And so
Yes.
that's another challenge is like, wait, number one, you want me to get out of my comfort zone. And number two, you want me to learn an entirely new language, if you will. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's another dynamic that, that's going to
That's
kind of get
interesting. Yeah.
addressed, right?
I'm not
Um,
surprised by that, though, to be honest. Like something about emotional intelligence has like a stigma. And it's what I think we're starting like the EQ gangster profile and things like that are starting to lose the stigma, but I think people see it as like some kind of like weakness or something, and really it's a strength at the end of the day to have high emotional intelligence. It's not doesn't have to be this warm fluffy unicorn space. In fact, the more emotionally intelligent you are, the more likely you are to be a badass because you understand, you're aware of your emotions and how to operate in the world from an emotional perspective. So I think like EQ gangster and like the this bringing awareness to emotional intelligence is like key so that people can get over this thought that it's something warm and fuzzy that is somehow not worth your time. You know what I mean?
yes, and here's a here's a real life scenario. I've got so let's see. Oh, how do I talk about this? So
Okay.
I am in some real life conflict with multiple parties right now. Uh,
Hmm.
and thankfully, I was not the stimulus of said conflict. So,
You're just a byproduct. You're in there. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I was kind of a bystander, let's say, and
Okay.
so kind of because of, let's say, proximity, got involved in this conflict situation, and there's I'll say a pipe hitter that one would normally classify as a typical, you know how do you handle conflict? Well, you handle it with a baseball bat, obviously, right? That's
Right.
that's
Right.
how you handle
Just
conflict
smash it
is
and it's gone. Yeah.
boom, right? Let me go full
Yeah.
Incredible Hulk mode, and I'm sure that will help out the situation, right? So
Hmm.
and
It'll work.
so
Yeah, it'll go away.
yeah, and thankfully because of that I've been working on this area, that would be my normal response also as as an
Mm.
emotional 5-year-old. It's how do 5-year-olds handle stuff is they throw a tantrum.
Mhm.
And if my tantrum is bigger than maybe your tantrum, I'm going to win the conflict. And again,
Yeah.
you can talk about that, right? Defining what does winning even mean to each of the different
Yeah.
parties, right?
Hmm.
But for me, to your point, now that I have learned how to maintain awareness and regulation of my emotions, and now I can finally be in control of my emotions while in conflict, conflict is not scary to me anymore. Now it's
Yeah.
like it's like jujitsu. I'm not scared to roll with you. I'm not scared to roll with your husband. I'm not scared to roll with any of the guys that he works with because I've got tools. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to beat any of those guys, but I have the tools where I'm not
Yeah.
afraid. I'm not afraid to roll with any of them, right? And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so whether it's anger I've got to roll with, or frustration I have to roll with, or mad, or sad, or depression, or frustration, or disappointment, or rejection, or whatever the opponent is,
Yeah.
I can roll safely with that opponent and learn, okay, Laurel, hey, I appreciated rolling with you. When I rolled with you, I learned how to do an armbar better, or I learned, right? Like
Mhm.
now I can roll with that emotion with a learning mindset, not an adversarial mindset.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 Like you're seeing it as a growth opportunity as opposed to a threat to who you
Boom.
are and what you're trying to do in life or achieve. Yeah. Totally get it. That
Yes.
comes back to like a
Yes.
growth mindset. And I love that. It's like taking in a growth mindset when you have like a challenge, there's two ways you can face it. As an opportunity to grow and learn, even if you fail, or a threat to who you are and it'll expose you. And so you need to protect
Mm,
and win the battle, so to speak.
yeah.
And it sounds like you in particular use a growth mindset to see how you can take this challenge and grow from it and learn from it, whatever it might be.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Mhm.
How can a leader and or leader developer, which I would argue coaches fall into that category,
Yeah.
how can a leader or a leader developer increase our curiosity?
Oh, what a question. Well, that comes to a different question. Is curiosity something that can be cultivated? Maybe I don't know the answer, but it's interesting to think about because there's people that are naturally curious and it's their strength to be curious. But can you change your level of curiosity or is it based on interest?
So so I think it's yes to all those questions, right? Is that you can change the degree of your curiosity based on interest, right?
Yeah.
So and I do believe you can. I and again, this is no research. This is Big Poppy research here, right? This is so, which is
This is life
yeah,
research.
totally
Yeah.
anecdotal. Is
Case
I
study.
yes, is I had the
Hmm.
privilege of having two very intellectually curious parents. My
Hmm.
mom, we just got done hanging out with my mom. She's 80, and she like, and it's fascinating now seeing her after all these years. She's 80 and like almost doesn't shut up with questions. It is like a machine gun of questions, my mom. And it is like,
Nice.
wow, like this is how I grew up. Like I saw her with any, and she does it with any, it can be the janitor, it can be a CEO. She doesn't care who you are. She's gonna find out.
She's got questions.
She will know your blood type and your fourth generation family members in 15 minutes. And then my dad, but it's funny, my mom has more, she has more surface level questions. So her questions are wide.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dad, when he was around, he died 15 years ago. He was a C personality, a conscientious personality, and a steady personality. His questions were an inch wide and a mile deep. You know, he
Yeah.
would,
Yeah.
but and he was an ER doctor. He had this insatiable curiosity. And I remember
Hmm.
like thinking, Dad, I'm in high school. I don't know the meaning of life. I don't know how God feels about developing the love for his children. Like he would ask me questions. I'm like, Dad, I have no idea what you're talking about. But what it did was
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
both of them, it grew in me this hunger, this appetite for learning and for wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? Like, do you think curiosity is something that can be grown? And if so, how how would one develop curiosity?
Mm. It's a great story. I love that story. And I think curiosity and like most attributes are a combination of how you grew up, natural thinking patterns, and motivation, I would say. And so like for you, it's kind of like that whole argument, what am I thinking of? Nature versus nurture. And so you were exposed to a lot of like curiosity. And so you cultivated it and you ask lots of questions and you're the same way. There's some people that might be less naturally curious on a breadth of topics and they go more deep like your dad did. And those people, their curiosity is born from motivation around a topic, if that makes sense. And so I would say I'm in the same boat. And so to increase curiosity, you have to increase motivation or interest in the topic that you want to learn about. So, like, for example, I don't really have a whole lot of curiosity about how this bottle was made. I don't really care, but I'm very curious about how we can start leveraging AI technology for human development. So, because I'm interested in that, I'm motivated to learn about it, which means my curiosity is piqued or increased in that area. And so, if you want to increase curiosity, I think it has to come down to what are your interests and your motivations to learn more about that topic. You know what I mean? So like you're not gonna want to learn about things that you don't care about. So first you have to care, and then if you need to care about something that you don't right now, we have to go another layer down. Why do you need to care about it? So if you're talking about someone who, let's say with like D&I related issues, and they're like, why do I need to, care about diversity in my organization? I don't care about that. Like before you can get them motivated to be curious about diversity in the organization, they need to understand why diversity matters. So you have to get to the root. And then once they understand why diversity matters, maybe then they'll be curious about it. But if you can't get past the why, then you can't increase curiosity in that area. And then maybe it just doesn't click. And that also has to be okay. Some people just aren't going to get it, or they're not going to agree with something, or they're not going to really care about it. No matter, you can't, like, you're never going to convince me I want to care about where this bottle came from. And that needs to be okay. So it's finding that intersection between natural curiosity, your interests, and your motivation would be at least my perspective on how you would increase curiosity on a topic if someone's not naturally curious, like your mom, on a breadth of things.
Love it. Love it. Love it. How how what will what role will AI play in human development?
That's a big question because I don't think we know yet. I mean, AI is getting more intelligent every day. I mean, in ChatGPT, I can ask it, here, take this framework for me and give me a sample conversation based on this framework I gave you for goal setting, let's say. Pops out a beautiful transcript based on said, okay, here's the steps of the goal setting process I want you to use. Create a transcript between a coach and coachee. Perfect. It was like a textbook coaching conversation. We call it the happy path. So obviously there's the non-happy path where there's like hiccups in a conversation, but I wanted a happy path for when coaching works. And so I don't think we know yet. What it will be capable of and what it is capable of right now are two different questions. What it will be capable of, I don't think we know yet. I mean, we're getting to a point where some AI can read read facial movements. It can read body language. It can read tone of voice. So I mean, there's kind of no knowing where it could go depending on how advanced we get. But where we are right now is a little more clear in terms of like AI still can't quite connect dots or between like concepts, or like critical thinking tasks are still difficult for it. It can, or it can't read between the lines. So if you ask me a question and I pause and I'm thinking, or I'm looking up in like doing this or a grimace, the AI is not going to be able to say what's going on there. Like, why the pause or something like that. And so it can't really pick up on those like human cues that something's going on. But now what it can do is it can say, hey, I need to have a really difficult conversation with Noble. You know, we're just not getting along at work. We're really struggling. Like, can you help me? And it can prompt you through a conversation on how to like improve communication with your coworker, with you, Noble. So I think it's easier to answer the question of what it's capable of, and it's a lot harder to answer the question of what it will be capable of, because I think at the moment that's a giant question for everybody in terms of what AI can do as it continues to learn and advance.
Yeah. Well, and I read you had a quote in a big article recently you posted on LinkedIn that
Yeah.
something about, and it was really fascinating. The whole article was fascinating to include your quote in terms of like 2025 specifically, right? So just kind of focusing
Mhm.
into this next 12 months. And I was really surprised at the your quote and the theme of the article, because I just had this kind of just the direction how fast AI is going. And I've heard other people say there will not be a job in the future that AI will not be able to do, that they will be able to do every single right. And I'm seeing the nonverbals, right? And so reading your
Mm.
article was really fascinating. And your quote, how how do you think AI, and so now I'm kind of going specific to your quote,
Yeah.
how do you think AI is limited based on its capabilities, let's say over the next 12 months?
You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't know how to build human connection. It's still a computer, and it's still going to, you put in, it gives out what you want. Um, there's attempts to get it to start to empathize, but it's not human, so it doesn't really know what that would look like or what that would mean. And there's something like about the unspoken ability that humans have to connect. And this can go all the way back to like remote work. For example, like I work in a fully remote company. The thing we crave the most is in-person opportunities to work together. Despite I have like 10 meetings a day, I talk on video calls constantly. But as soon as we get in person to connect in person, hug each other, talk, eat meals together, it immediately strengthens our bond to each other and our camaraderie. And so if we take that as an example and we look at AI, you can't meet with AI in person. There's no person. In fact, when they try to in the past, and Meta tried to do this, Facebook's, you know, parent company, when they tried to use AI avatars of celebrities and they tried to communicate with a celebrity, that project bombed. It went away. It did not work. And you would think that it would, because, you know, if you think about it, you get to talk to a celebrity. Why don't you connect? But people know that when something's not human, that's trying to be human. And it's actually an interesting phenomenon I've been studying recently called the uncanny valley. And it's basically there's a point, and it's on like this axis. It's probably backwards even to me, but a familiarity and like or humanness and familiarity. And so as something becomes more human, our familiarity goes up. We understand it. It's kind of human. Cartoons are included, robots are included. But there's a point somewhere around 75% to 90% of human likeness that there is a complete drop in familiarity. And people are like, that's uncanny, that's creepy, that's weird. And so as soon as something becomes too human, we actually get turned off by it. We get like the ick, like, oh, that's not, because we know it's not human, yet it's trying so hard to be human. And so, in terms of like your 2020, that's a long way to come back to your 2025 question. But AI is still limited by this uncanny valley effect, where if it tries too hard to be human, we actually find it creepy. And so, in terms of its capabilities, it's still a computer. We know it's still a computer, and it can help us on a lot of basic tasks and help us with interpersonal communication skills. But as soon as it tries to empathize too much with us, like say something like, I totally understand where you're coming from, Noble, we get creeped out because honestly, like, you can't totally understand where I'm coming from. You're AI. And so I think that's where the limitation is like AI can only act so human before people are like turned off by it. And so that's going to limit what it's capable of, at least for now.
That's great. That's fascinating. Fascinating. Okay. Second to last question is
Yeah.
you what with all the elite and high achievers and high performers you are, right, and you've been able to work with,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to somebody wanting to be able to, number one, be a high performer, high achiever, optimize, number two, optimize their potential and performance, and three, be able to sustain that
Mhm.
output? What advice, thoughts would you give?
It comes down to two key ones for me. Setting really effective goals. Effective being the key word there. So let's say I said when I was playing soccer in college that I wanted to be, not even college, just back up. Let's say I was in high school and I said I wanted to play in college. Like that's an idea, but that's not really a goal, not yet. Like the goal, a more specific, effective goal is I want to play soccer for UNC Chapel Hill, and I want to start on the team. Now we're getting specific. And now we have something we're directly trying to achieve. And it's kind of like the same idea as like the New Year's resolution issue, where someone's like, I want to lose weight this year. And that's kind of like the end of the story. And so for like January and February, they're in the gym and they're crushing it. And then in March, they forget to renew their membership. And then they start just going on walks, and then they get busy. And by June, they lost weight, gain weight, and they're back to zero. A more effective goal is I want to lose 50 pounds by July of 2025. And to do that, I'm going to backwards plan actions and tasks to achieve that, that I'm then going to hold myself accountable to by not only laying it out in a plan, but telling my husband about. So that he's like, hey, Laurel, did you go to the gym today? Why are you eating that piece of cake? Here's a carrot, whatever the case may be. So I would say effective goal setting for what you want to achieve, and all of the high performers will tell you this. Elon Musk, Michael Phelps, Bill Gates, they all have effective goal setting strategies to be successful. And then the other part to sustain movement on those goals is consistent habits. And you described them. You got to get really consistent with the basics. Like I need to have my sleep solid, my diet, and my exercise solid so that I can expend energy and have the freedom to work on the other things that will help me achieve my goal, if that makes sense. And I could go into like, I had this whole revelation recently around discipline. And I was listening to Ben Shapiro, and he had a Catholic priest on his podcast. Um, and he was talking about like how people see discipline as the enemy. And it's bad because you don't have the freedom to do whatever you want. He was talking specifically about sin and Christians, and how people see being a Christian as a restriction on their life, and they don't get to do what they want to do. And so discipline is bad because it restricts your freedom to do whatever you want. But actually, discipline unlocks you to have the freedom to do what you want. And I talked about this on LinkedIn. I think I put it on LinkedIn. Yeah. One of my LinkedIn posts is like when you're disciplined to work out, sleep well, and eat well, you actually have the freedom to move about the world as you want to. So, like, because I do all of those things, I am free to say, I want to go run a marathon next week because I work out. If I didn't take care of myself and I wasn't disciplined, I couldn't do that. I would be limited. I'd be restricted by my lack of physical fitness. And so, if you want to have the freedom to pursue your goals, you need to be disciplined and consistent in your habits.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And just to just throw in some EQ stuff that's been helpful for my discipline is
Yeah.
it has been helpful to increase my understanding and awareness of emotions and how they might possibly affect, hinder, or support my goal of discipline.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because I think
Emotions absolutely play a part in that. Yes.
right, because I think a lot
Hmm.
of people who, well, let me just speak for myself. I have had lots of goals to be disciplined that have been thwarted by my self-sabotage, my feelings in the moment, my
Yep.
emotions in the I don't feel like cold plunging today. I don't feel like eating healthy, fill in the gaps, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so for me it's been a game changer to well, here's another perfect one. The only way I would when I felt a bolus of emotion coming to the surface, my immediate trigger was eating.
Yeah.
Shovel, shovel, shovel. So that's how I coped, was eating. And then I realized like I can choose, hey Noble, I can choose other ways to process my emotions. I can actually walk and process my emotions. I can lift weights
Mhm.
and process my emotions. I can cold plunge and process. Like there's other ways
Yeah.
I can journal and process my emotions, right? So um but I have the freedom to choose what I'm disciplined at, and
Yes.
I can be
Yes.
disciplined at obeying my emotions and feelings, which in my opinion has not proven or led to the results and outcomes I want for my life, right? And so you can choose your discipline, I guess, is what that's another interesting thought.
Yeah, I love
Okay,
that. Yeah,
okay.
you're absolutely right. Like emotions have to play a role. Like think about it. Like if I'm grumpy or if I'm in a bad mood, your girl doesn't want to go for a run. Your girl wants to play Fortnite, honestly, and get my anger out and like kill somebody on Fortnite. So like that you're 100% right that you have to have emotional intelligence to be disciplined on your habits. I love that. I love that combination.
Okay, how do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we find your content? What kind of resources, do you have maybe that kind of thing? How do we connect with you?
LinkedIn probably the first and most active way. So if you find me on LinkedIn, I'm most active on there. But I do have a YouTube channel that's not active that I need to boost back up, and an Instagram channel or page where I try and post the content that we've talked about today. The Instagram is called Okay So Listen. That's like my whole thing. Like, okay, so listen. Let me make sure. Hold on. Let me make sure. I haven't looked at honestly, and don't put this in the podcast. I haven't looked at this thing in forever. But it's okay underscore so listen. That's the Instagram handle. And then the YouTube channel, which also needs attention, is called Okay So Listen as well. And that's just the name of it. Um, and so both are really just about helping people like get to the roots of things. Like, okay, so listen, work on your habits. Okay, so listen, work on this, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I would say that those are the three key ways, and the most active ones are LinkedIn or the Instagram.
Awesome. And LinkedIn is just under your name. We just search your name.
Just search my name, you'll find me.
Okay,
I think I'm
perfect.
the only
So
one. Laurel McKenzie, there you go.
okay, okay, perfect, perfect. Laurel, thank you. Absolutely can't thank you enough for sharing. And I could do a full Joe Rogan episode on you, right? And we could do 3 hours together,
We
or
totally
more,
could.
right?
Yep.
Because I'm so fascinated with you know all the stuff that you're fascinated in. Is just you've got so much wisdom in so many different areas that I love to learn about. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we can do more of these, multiple episodes with you over the
Yeah.
time at some point.
Oh yeah. These bring me energy. And to your point, I think we could talk forever, and I get energy from that and I enjoy it. So yeah, let's do more episodes together.
And I will tell you, as a let's see, what am I going on, 5-year podcaster, and over, I've interviewed over 100 people,
That's
and
amazing.
been on, probably 100 podcasts myself. For your first podcast ever, you killed it.
Did I? Yeah. I'm a natural, what can I say?
So thank you, Laurel.
Yeah, anytime. Happy to come back.